Welcome back, everybody. Well, got a new one for you today, or really actually it's a bit of an old one. I am going to show off my ESEE 5. I have generally stripped the coating off of it. It was originally the Venom Green coating, and it's ESEE 5 made in the Rowan factory by Randall's Adventure Training. And so I've etched the logos so that way, even though I stripped it, I didn't lose the logos. Use a little ferric chloride before you take the plastic coating off, or epoxy coating, powder coat, whatever you want to call it. And I've convexed the edge pretty good. So it's been through a lot with me. I've practiced an overwhelming amount of bushcraft behaviors with it, but there's a few things I learned along the way with this knife. One of the ones is that it is a really heavy knife. 1/4 inch on the spine, really big G10 scales on it. But you know, it was originally designed by a sear instructor who I think works for Randall's Adventure Training, and the intent of it was to make sure that you had enough knife that you could not only cut your way out of a fuselage by, you know, hacking your way through aluminum or things like that, but once you got through it, you still actually had a very functional knife that you could sharpen on a rock and go survive in the wilderness with until rescue. Well, just as an example, you know, this is not ideal. Don't try this at home unless you have one of these and you don't mind tearing it up. But just wanted to show that this knife is so heavy that you could easily use it as a hammer if you ever needed to, because again, it's very heavy duty. But actually what I wanted to show off was that once you well convex the edge on it, you can very easily feather stick with it, even as long as you have done some bit of modification on the edge. Now granted, I think one of these out of the box you could probably still feather stick relatively well with it, but I convexed the edge so that way it made very beautiful curling edge. Very beautiful curls on that, because again, as you know, I enjoy whittling, and feather sticking is a bit of a pastime of mine. So I have a feeling some folks who are going to see this for the first time are going to be like, this guy's got all this 2x4s that he's busting up so he can make these videos. What a cheapskate. Well, I live in a suburb and I'm doing a ton of construction on my house, so I've actually got a lot of 2x4s in the basement that I've cut, and these are all scraps from some of the work that's being done on the framing. So that's the reason why I'm using this stuff. Not because if I was in the woods I'd be taking 2x4s with me. I hope that you understand that's not how I would operate. But again, ESEE makes a bomb-proof knife, and the ESEE 5, at least this one, came with a nice Kydex sheath, and it has a little slip that you can lock it down so it gets a bit tighter retention, but in a pinch you can still yank it out of there. But it makes it a little bit easier like that. I had put some inner tube on here because at some point I figured I might tuck things in there as I'm on the go. That's a bit much, it's a bit excessive. And one of the other modifications I've done to it, which was sort of unnecessary, but I put a little notch right here just above the jimping, so it's kind of not very noticeable. It's above the top jimping, and that was the intent, was so that way I could throw sparks with it. See, getting some sparks on there. There you go. Yeah, and so the idea is when you got a bit of feathers going, you would try to build your fire. Now I'm not going to do that because, as you can see, I'm on a wooden deck. This is in my backyard, so I'm not going to be building fires on top of my wooden deck, but you get the picture, okay? And so I like a technique, just so you know, my technique of it is that I tend to stick the rod down and then I pump so I can drop a shower of sparks on whatever, you know, feathery material that I'm planning on using. But I'm not building a fire out here. It's very hot and relatively dry, plus like I'm on a wooden platform, so I don't want to set a fire on top of this. Now if I was down in the grass or out in the woods somewhere where it was a safe environment where I'm not going to be setting the brush on fire and then starting a forest fire or something, then yeah, great opportunity to start a fire, especially if you're in wet, cold conditions. This is an old Ferro rod that I've had for a little while, and I kind of doubles as a Kubotan with my work keys. So if you have to smack somebody or use this as certain purposes, but yeah. So otherwise, again, showing that off. ESEE knives. Oh, some of that ferrocerium smoke off of there. ESEE knives. Randall Adventure Training. They make a hell of a bomb-proof knife, and they even have a school, I think, down in Colombia, and I want to say also down in, oh gosh, you're going to be mad at me for getting this wrong, but probably Alabama, and they run adventure training and wilderness survival training and things like that from SEER instructors. And so otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for stopping by.